Last night I dreamt I went to Monderley again. Monderley. Our Monderley. Secretive and silent, as it had always been. Grey stones shining in the moonlight of my dream. The mullioned windows reflecting the green lawns and the terrace. As I stood there, hushed and still, I could swear that the house was not an empty shell. It lived and breathed as it had lived before. Light came from the windows. The curtains blew softly in the night air. And there, in the library, the door would stand half open. My handkerchief on the table beside the bowl of autumn roses. I stood there, listening, hoping, half expecting to hear the crunch of car wheels on the gravel, to hear footsteps in the hall, to see Maxim standing there, smiling at me.
De Winter, the man who owns Monderley. He looks so ill, doesn't he? They say he can't get over his wife's death. Poor man, what a tragedy. We'll ask him over for coffee. Well, why not, for heaven's sake? He'll be grateful, sitting there all by himself. I'll write him a note. Now, where's my pen?
In your handbag.
We're only being friendly after all. He'll be grateful for that. Nothing worse than being lonely in Monte Carlo. Loneliness is always worse when you're surrounded by people enjoying themselves. Now, there. Take that across to the waiter and tell him to bring us another cup. Why, Mr. De Winter, how sweet of you to join us. I recognized you just as soon as you came through that door. Why, there's Mr. De Winter, I said to myself. There's Billy's friend, Mr. De Winter. He's on his honeymoon now, did you know that? He got married last month, he and Dora. Billy was telling me that Palm Beach is crowded with the most exciting people. They're having such a lovely time. Thank you so much. Do you know Palm Beach, Mr. De Winter?
No, I don't.
Oh, it's the most wonderful place. So glamorous. Parties every night.
No, I'm afraid I'm not much of a party goer.
You're not? Oh, my Billy just loves them. But then if he had a home like Monderley, I guess he wouldn't want to play around in Palm Beach. Monderley. Isn't that the most beautiful name you ever heard? My Billy says it has all those big places beat for beauty. Why, you could never bear to leave it. Isn't there a minstrel's gallery at Monderley? And some very valuable portraits? Mr. De Winter is so modest he won't admit it. But I believe that lovely home of his has been in the family since the Norman conquest. Isn't that so? I suppose your ancestors must often have entertained royalty at Monderley, Mr. De Winter.
Not since Ethelred, the one who was called the Unready. In fact, it was while he was staying with my family that he was given the name. He was invariably late for dinner.
Is that really so? I'd no idea. But my history is very shaky, and the kings of England always muddled me. But that is very interesting. I must write and tell my daughter she's a great scholar.
Are you staying here long?
Well, that all depends. I have some dear friends in Paris. Or we might go on to St. Moritz. Who knows? I do so adore being fancy-free, don't you?
What do you think of Monte Carlo? Or don't you think of it at all?
Oh, it is very elegant, I suppose. A bit artificial.
She's spoiled, Mr. De Winter. That's her problem. Most girls would give their eyes for the chance of seeing Monty.
Wouldn't that rather defeat the purpose?
I'm faithful to Monty. The English winter gets me down and my constitution just won't stand it. It's those ghastly fogs I hate in London. You don't get them in Manderley, do you? Oh, the West Country must be enchanting in the spring.
Yes, Manderley was looking its best.
Excuse me, Mrs. Van Hopper. Madame Blaise is waiting upstairs.
Madame Blaise, my dressmaker? Oh, great heavens, I quite forgot.
Well, don't let me keep you. Fashions change so quickly nowadays, they may have altered by the time you get to your room.
It's been so delightful running into you like this, Mr. De Winter. Now, I've been brave enough to break the ice. I hope I shall see something of you. You must come and have a drink sometime in the suite. I may have a few people coming in tomorrow evening. Why not join us?
I'm so sorry, but I'm planning to go to Suspel. I don't know when I shall be back.
Oh, I hope they've given you a good room. The place is half empty, so if you're uncomfortable, mind you make a fuss. Has your valet unpacked for you yet?
I don't possess one. Perhaps you'd like to do it for me.
Well, I hardly think... Perhaps you could make yourself useful for Mr. De Winter if he wants anything done. She's a capable child, in many ways.
It's a charming suggestion, but I stick to the family motto. He travels the fastest who travels alone. Perhaps you've never heard of it.
What a funny thing. Numero deux. Suppose that sudden departure was a form of humor. Men do such extraordinary things. I remember a well-known writer who, whenever he saw me coming, used to dart down the service staircase. I suppose he had a penchant for me and wasn't sure of himself. I was younger then, of course.
What happened to Mrs. De Winter?
Oh, my dear, it was dreadful, tragic. They say he never talks about it, never even mentions her name. She was drowned in a bay near Manderley.
Mrs. Van Hopper tells me that you're good at sketching.
I'm John, yes.
You must let me see some of your work. I've quite a collection at home. Always looking for new talent, you know.
Oh, I'm sure you wouldn't be interested in me, Mr. Darwin.
Oh, don't you be too sure, my dear.
Oh, pardon me. Handkerchiefs? Where are my handkerchiefs?
Coming, Mrs. Van Hopper. Excuse me.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Get out of the way.
No, please.
You can't sit there. It's soaking wet.
Well, it doesn't matter a bit, really.
No, leave that. Lay a place at my table. Mademoiselle will be lunching with me.
I couldn't possibly.
Why not?
Well, it's very kind of you, but please don't be polite. I'm quite all right here.
I'm not being polite. I would like you to have luncheon with me. Even if you had not knocked over that vase so clumsily, I would still have invited you. Come and sit down. We needn't talk if we don't feel like it.
Melon, please, and grilled sole.
And to drink, mademoiselle?
Nothing, thank you.
Thank you, mademoiselle. L'américaine ne déjeune pas, mais la petite est casée.
What's happened to your friend?
Oh, she's not feeling very well this morning.
Well, nothing serious, I hope.
The doctor thinks it's influenza, and he's told her to stay in bed.
I behaved very badly yesterday afternoon. You must try to forgive me.
Oh, I didn't...
I was thoroughly ashamed of myself. My manners were atrocious. My only excuse is that I've become boorish through living alone.
Well, you weren't rude. Oh, no ruder than Mrs. Van Hopper. And she didn't mean to be rude. She just asks a lot of questions. She does that to everyone. Or anyone who's important, that is, you know.
Oh, I'm flattered. Why does Mrs. Van Hopper think I'm important?
I think because of Monderley.
She's very much older than you. Is she a relation?
Oh, no.
Have you known her long?
Well, she's not really a friend. She's an employer. She's training me to be a thing called a companion. And she pays me £90 a year.
I didn't know. I didn't know that you could buy companionship. It sounds rather a primitive idea, like an Eastern slave market.
I looked the word up in a dictionary. It said, a companion is a friend of the bosom.
Why'd you do it?
Well, £90 is a lot of money to me.
Haven't you any family?
No, they're dead.
You wish your steak now, sir, or later?
Later.
Very good, sir.
Thank you.
Do you enjoy being a friend of the bosom?
I enjoy some of it.
Don't you find it rather irksome?
Sometimes, I suppose, yes.
Tell me about it.
Tell you what?
Tell me what it's like. Tell me what you do.
I couldn't.
Why not?
I wouldn't know where to begin.
Try.
Please, I'd rather not.
Sounds to me as though you're ashamed of it.
Why'd you say that?
Well, it's an impression, speculation, nothing more.
Well, you're right. It is rather shameful. Well, sometimes it's very shameful. Well, yesterday afternoon it was awful.
What happened?
Well, Madame Blaise came with some dresses. And Mrs. Van Hopper bought 3 of them. They were terribly expensive. Anyway, afterwards, I went down to the lobby with her, with Madame Blaise, and she tried to give me 100 francs. As commission, she said. I was so ashamed I didn't know where to look. I was so embarrassed.
I think you've made a mistake.
You think I should have taken the money?
No, heavens no. I think you've made a mistake in coming here, in joining forces with Mrs. Van Hopper. You're not made for this sort of a job. You're too young, for one thing, and too vulnerable. Blaise and her commission, that's nothing. There'll be plenty of Madame Blaises in your life if you stick to it. You can either give in and become a sort of Blaise yourself, or stay as you are and be broken. Haven't you ever thought about the future? I mean, supposing Mrs. Van Hopper suddenly grows tired of her friend of the bosom, what then?
I'd get another job, I suppose. There are plenty of them. Well, the magazines are full of advertisements for ladies' companions.
Grilled sole for mademoiselle with pommes sautées and haricots verts. And the steak bleu for monsieur with green salad.
We have a bond in common, you and I.
What's that?
Do you want to see the sommelier, monsieur?
No, this will do me fine, thank you.
Thank you.
We're both alone in the world. Oh, I have a sister, but we don't see much of each other. And an aging grandmother, whom I pay duty visits to 3 times a year. But neither of them provide much in the way of companionship. I shall have to congratulate Mrs. Van Hopper. You're cheap at £90 a year.